Howdy, folks. We're back, and Russ is back.
Hey!
From his wayward journey into Ontario at the top prospects game, and we'll talk about that near the end of the show. I wanted to ask a couple things about that, but to get started, Russ. So we have some non-hockey stuff.
Yeah, there's a radio host out of WEEI that sort of gets one of these arranged interviews with Tom Brady. So, and I guess it's the only station in town he'll call into, because Tom Brady's not the best in press conferences. I've witnessed it. He's very, like, if you don't ask Tom Brady the right question, he'll either just not answer you or he'll just walk out of the press conference.
Yeah, they have a contract with him. It's like the Bills have players that do regular radio spots every year.
I mean, again, I was at a press conference in Tom Brady in Gillette Stadium, and 2 questions were asked of him, and then like a Boston Globe reporter asked him, "Hey, what's it like to have the game at your stadium?" And he's like, "I don't want to talk about it," and he walks out in mid-sentence, like the guy. And so the world knows, especially in that world, that he's touchy with stuff. And this idiot drags his daughter into it and says something derogatory about his daughter. And it's like, I get that there's some idiots out there that feel like they have to be over the top even in this day and age, to get ratings. But again, like you said, this is a guy who's contracted for the station. He may never go back now on the station. He's thinking about it. And you have now put a black eye to that station. And we know somebody who works at that station.
Yeah, I mean, they've suspended the guy indefinitely, probably because they're worried that
probably forever.
He was new. I don't know much about the guy other than his name, and I won't mention it. But yeah, I mean, it's a 5-year-old kid, and he calls her I won't even say the name, but it wasn't like anything like it was. No, but it was derogatory. It wasn't vulgar. It was just stupid. It's a 5-year-old kid. I mean, come on.
I don't write about people's families. I write about hockey. Now, if I'm covering something that they want to talk about their family, great. I'll put it in there. But I'm not talking about somebody's kid and saying that basically the kid's annoying. Like, it's just, it's to the dad. Like, what dad isn't going to react the way he did?
Yeah. And he cut the interview short on EEI, and like you said, I don't know if he's going to I'm pretty sure his contractual agreement ended with maybe the week after the Super Bowl. So if he stiffs on that, I think he's going to financially recover. So,
yeah.
but just bad pool there. I thought that was a pretty weak presentation.
One more thing too. I heard something on a local Philly station. One of the backup players for the Eagles had been calling around Minnesota and couldn't get like a restaurant reservation. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. Again, when there's things written in the paper, like a fan, 2 different fans, 2 different weeks punching a horse, and there's other things covered in the paper, local personalities here act like these are contrived stories or just absolutely isolated cases, where none of that is true. Now, all fan bases have idiots. I say it all the time. But again, when you are now associated with that team, and that game is in the city where they felt like those fans were wronged, and there are stories about, we saw the cans of beer being thrown at a Vikings fan.
Yeah.
You're going to get the cold shoulder in that city. That's obvious.
Yeah. I mean, it's strange that I think, in most cities right now, the Patriots would be viewed as the representative of evil. But I don't think that's going to be that way in Minnesota after the way their fans were treated in Philadelphia. By the way, the ultimate troll move, it's out there on Twitter, a picture of the Rocky Balboa statue in Philadelphia with a Tom Brady jersey on it.
I laugh at stuff like that because, again, like the Rocky statue should not have this significance in this city. And it does, and it's a made up character by a movie star who wrote a script, and somehow half the town believes it's embraced what the aura of Philadelphia is, and it's like, come on, like seriously.
we're going to talk
I never understood that. Like, imagine if New York City, like, just make up a character, Dr. New York, and they put up a statue and said, "This is our guy. Like, this is everything we want to aspire to. Is this? This is the story of our city, and it's made up."
Dr. Detroit.
Like, I used to say Joe Frazier. How long did it take to get a Joe Frazier statue? Like, it took forever. I even started a GoFundMe for it because I was like, I was appalled. It's like, you've got this fictional character here, and Joe Frazier was real, and he was from Philadelphia. He had a ring in Philadelphia, a training area in Philadelphia. He won the championship. He was the real guy.
It's bad. It's so bad. Now we're going to talk about the All-Star game and a few things surrounding it. But I immediately thought of you, Russ, when...
Wait, shouldn't we start the show?
We're going to start the show after this because this is not related to the game itself.
Okay.
There was like an interview set up with a few different players, Austin Matthews being one of them, and they decided to let like 15 puppies from I think it was from like a shelter or the SPCA in the Tampa area, and they just let them out, and they were like the 2 or 3 different players were playing around with the puppies and having them sitting there in their lap while they're doing the interview, and apparently some of them got adopted.
Good.
So I thought it was a cute thing that was done. A little distracting, but it was cute.
Yeah.
And it found some homes, so I liked that. I thought that was cute.
Now, did the Toronto reporters report if Austin Matthews was sort of stoic with the puppy?
Mm-mm. He was very like, he was sort of like happy and giddy. He was like.
But just imagine if he wasn't. That would have been like a headline.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, I've been around Austin Matthews when the cameras are not on. I mean, I try not to have like personal conversations with players. I just leave them be. But when he's talking to other people, he's just a normal kid.
This is more about the Toronto media, that they would probably jump on something like that because there's not much to write about at the All-Star game.
I don't think they're that voracious. I don't think they're that predatory.
I don't know about that.
No, I'm a member of that media, Russ. We're not that bad.
You don't think Steve Simmons would write that? Come on.
No. Steve Simmons is a good guy.
He is a good guy. It still doesn't mean he's not looking for a headline.
Well, yeah, but there's no headline there.
Okay.
There's no headline there.
Uh-huh.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, January 29th, 2018.
I'm Russ Cohn from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the All-Star game. I know that the score was 5-2 in favor of the Pacific. That was about as much as I could tell you about the actual games, because other than watching maybe 2 or 3 minutes of the preliminary match and seeing the Pacific team in all white and looked like a team of Casper the Friendly Ghosts, I really didn't watch.
Every year they outdo themselves, though, for ugly All-Star jerseys. They do.
Brutal. And, okay, from everything I heard, and I've seen like some of the highlights because I sort of was watching something else and following it on social media. So I saw Austin Matthews do the goal thing. Him and Eichel did a choreographed goal thing, which I thought was pretty funny. But again, it's a contrived event. I understand that it's for the fans. Although I looked at the like some of the video when they panned throughout the crowd. That building was not full, so this was not like a standing room only event. But it's for, I mean, who it's for. It's
a regional event. That's what it is. It's for those fans. They their team went the furthest, which is fine. I watched a little over a period when the Metro played. I saw some great saves out of Lundqvist. And again, you see goalies hung out to dry, and there's nothing they can do. Matthews scored a couple of nice goals. Ovechkin scored a couple of nice goals. There was something that was said in my household that I had no defense for, and it's really true. Basically, there was confusion. Like, hey, what is this? Is this the All-Star game? No, this is just like a round-robin tournament at the moment, and they're going to determine like the final participants. And then the question was like, well, then are these the best All-Stars or not? And it's true. There's a lot of confusion with this because, they're trying to reinvent the wheel. But at the end of the day, if you do want to get casual viewers, which, again, All-Star games sometimes can do that, you shouldn't make it a format like this because it does lead the viewer to believe that not all the best guys are there, because you're doing it by division, which then means, well, you got to have everybody from every division, which then means some guys are left off the roster, which is true, right? And then of course, last minute, you always get the guys that duck out, which stinks.
Yeah, and by the way, we mentioned it, I think, on Thursday, or on our Off the Post show on Saturday, that Seth Jones bowed out and Zach Werenski replaced him. But the one that was the conspicuous one was Braden Point replacing Victor Hedman. And when they did this 3-on-3, there was one shift where Barkov was the defenseman. And that just makes this even more of a contrived event, because very few times during regular season play, very few times are there 3 forwards out there. Usually there's one defenseman. I've seen sometimes where there's 2 defensemen. So having 3 forwards out there, I know it's for entertainment purposes, but again, it's just really just that, they have enough time to basically make the goaltender look like a fool. And these are the best goalies in the league, which I would hate to be, Vasilevsky's having an unbelievable year. He looked horrific out there because, he was just being left out 2-on-0s, 2-on-1s. It's tough for a goalie. Now,
Didi in the chat room goes, Brian Boyle, best all-star. Okay, Russ. Yeah, that was a great story. Every year, listen, that's what the NHL is good at. Every year there's going to be a story. There was a great story the year before. There's a great story. There's always going to be a story. Doesn't mean it's a great event. That's what
John Scott at a theater near you. Some soon.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's like there's always a story. Always.
Yes. Now the story in terms of, and I'm not 100% sure that the Vancouver Canucks will actually be pleased about this, but Brock Besser won the MVP of the tournament. He now the $25,000 he won for the shooting accuracy, I don't think affects the cap, but and the $100,000 he won for being part of the winning team doesn't affect the cap. But he did get a bonus from his contract, $212,500 on his entry level deal for being the MVP of the All-Star game. And not that Vancouver's a cap team, but you know what I'm saying. It's a meaningless event. So why is this in the baseline entry level deal?
Because a good agent put it in there, and the Vancouver Canucks figured it ain't happening.
Right, but it did.
But it did.
And he also won a car, and I'm not sure. I'm based on the fact that he's making an entry level deal of $925,000 US. I'm sure he's already got a car. I don't even know what kind of car it was. If it's like a Yugo or something like that, I'm sure he's giving it to a.
It's probably who's the car manufacturer, who's the car sponsor.
I don't think it was Honda. I don't know.
It might be Dodge or somebody. I don't know. That's who it'll be. It'll be one of their cars.
Yeah, Chrysler. Okay. So now.
I will say this, though. Yeah. We don't want to bury this. Apparently, and I saw just a quick video of it, that Hillary Knight got to do skills competition.
Mm-hmm.
And she had quicker times and more accurate than, I think, 5 NHLers, really key, great NHLers in that same event.
Well, I saw Megan Duggan do the and this was the weirdest event. It was the one where they pass into the little nets.
Yeah, that whole thing was weird.
I mean, it's like there was something early on that I can't remember what they did, but then they pass the puck off of sort of 4 like bumpers, and then they go into the offensive zone, and they have to pass the puck into these small nets, and then they shoot the puck in the net, and that's the end of the whole thing. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, again. How contrived? I thought
that was like, to me, that was hockey's version of mini golf. When you're shooting into like the dragon's mouth and you're waiting for the thing to come out the other end, and you're at putt and you're at the last couple of holes. Like it just doesn't make sense. But the accuracy did, and to point out to all the haters out there that maybe don't want to watch women's hockey and don't want to, Hillary Knight performed better than some men.
Yes,
she did.
And I think the worst event was the one where they had this 3-level thing where the players had to like shoot the puck through it, they had to go through a like stick handling drill through pucks, then around cones, and then they had to pass the puck or shoot the puck through this 3-level tower. One of the levels lit up, and it got so bad for Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson picked the puck up off the ice with his glove, put it on a stick, and pushed it through. It's like, really, that's entertainment. Yeah, that's entertainment, folks. And by the way, they had a significant delay getting the screen up after the Kid Rock performance in the arena. So if that wasn't an omen of things. Okay.
Wait, one more thing.
Yep.
We should mention Connor McDavid did look great winning fastest skater, and not shocked that he won it. What's interesting for that, and I'm a fan. I like watching fastest skater. I didn't happen to watch all the heats this year, but when it's on, I think it's exciting and it is fun to watch. However, there are people that do make sense when they say, hey, the way they do this, the skills competition, really none of them are game transferable skills anymore.
Right.
Even the way they do the fastest skater, it's not game transferable. And, and maybe if they changed it to that, where we see them doing things that they actually do in games,
right,
we might find it more interesting. That's just a hint there.
Yeah, they took the nets and they moved them forward so they could skate around like through the crease rather than skating around the nets like it would be in a regular game. So yeah,
I would rather see it like in a regular game. That's
right. What I think they're worried about is them skating as fast as possible and then possibly.
But then don't back skate.
Right. Then, don't get tangled with the net. That's what I think they're worried about. They're worried about McDavid, like getting tangled with the net and, breaking his leg, God forbid.
No, but you know what I'm saying? There's a way to do this that it's game transferable skills that are being shown off.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the news. Now, Gary Bettman had his, I guess you'd call it mid-season state of the game announcement, or just basically a press conference covering a number of issues. Stadium situations were at the forefront. One was Calgary, where essentially, and he said this with his interview with Ron McLean, that ownership in Calgary has given up on an arena in Calgary, which to me means they haven't given up, but they're trying to put pressure on the mayor of Calgary to get some sort of deal done. But of course, I've been hearing, on interviews and things of that nature, the subtle threat of, Houston or them selling the team. And then
Ottawa's getting their downtown stadium now. So clearly what Melnick did worked.
Well, it's step one. I talked to somebody.
They're getting it.
They're getting it, but it's not going to be something that's going to be very quick. They're talking about this was step one in Ottawa.
Sure,
they're getting it, but the LeBreton Flats, downtown Ottawa arena. But the problem is they're saying it's a positive first step.
Confused with Yucca Flats after the blast.
No. There's no radioactive glass in downtown Ottawa, although sometimes with their government.
Actually, that was a great line from the Honeymooners. One day, Ralph walked into the apartment, and he said, "This place looks like Yucca Flats after the blast." And of course, Alice gets really mad at him.
To the moon. But it's going to take a while in Ottawa. And I talked to somebody who covers the Senators, and they basically said that this is so far in the future. This is not going to affect short term what the Senators are going to do, say at the deadline in terms of the budgetary constraints. If Melnick is still in control, and I mean, meaning if he doesn't sell the team in the next year, they're gonna slap back the operating budget on this team, and that puts into dispute, whether a guy like Karlsson stays there or not. Now, more than likely they're not going to trade him, but it's up to him whether he leaves in free agency after next year. But that situation is far from being solved. Now, Calgary was one, Ottawa was two. Curious regarding the Arizona situation. Bettman basically said the ownership there is continuing to pursue building deals in the Glendale, Scottsdale, Phoenix area, but nothing.
Can we ask? Did anybody follow up that with how many more buildings are there to search?
No, they didn't. He just said that they're going to continue.
Pretty vague, right?
Yeah, they're going to continue to do that, but he offered no sort of like end game or some deadline. I think right now, maybe internally they know, or people in Arizona know at a certain point, and maybe he was part of the ownership agreement with whoever the owner is now, that after a certain amount of time, if they couldn't find something there, then they would be allowed to move that team someplace else. Because right now, I mean, the other comments about Seattle were essentially, he couldn't say anything about it being a certainty about Seattle, but it sounded like it's a certainty. It sounded like they're getting their application in order. It's a certainty.
So much a certainty that it's a virtual lock.
Yeah. Now, one interesting thing, Bettman was completely, again, we've talked about this on the show before. Bettman was completely against increasing the size of the playoffs from 16 teams to more teams even if the league is at 32. And I don't know. I think that the owners will have something to say about that.
Well, no, that's why I think the 1-game playoff will come in, because it really doesn't extend the playoffs. It extends the play-in to get to the playoffs, and I think they'll compromise on that.
Yeah. Now, is that something that maybe there has to be, part of the new CBA that
probably.
Yeah. So that might be, a little carrot and stick that is involved in that. Okay.
Here's the other thing to point out too. The new teams, what is it, $650, $700 million that the owners get?
Yeah, $650. Yeah.
And I think when Winnipeg moved, it was like 150, something like that.
Around 200, yeah.
200, yeah. So when this all happens, owners are going to get about $30 million apiece.
Yeah, it's a sizable chunk. And the question is what's going to happen with these teams if a team like Arizona does move. I mean, there's been speculation that if a team moves, they're expecting to get some sort of transfer fee. But who's going to pay that? It's like, okay,
they'll pay $200 million. They will.
Well, no, they're saying
it's not going to be. It's going to be 200.
Right. I mean, if it's comparable to the expansion fee, I don't see anybody like, okay, say Murray Edwards in Calgary sells the Calgary Flames to the owner of the Houston Rockets. He's going to pay $500 million for the team and $500 million for a transfer fee. He's going to pay $1 billion. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the case. So
they're not talking about it right now, but I believe it'll be similar to Winnipeg, similar money.
Now,
maybe it'll go up a little bit. Maybe it'll be 250.
Yeah. It was announced over the weekend, and this is the worst kept secret. Newsday reported that the Islanders will play 12 games at Nassau Coliseum next season. The remaining games will be played at Barclays, and the following year they will play half their regular season games and some preseason games at the Nassau Coliseum. So so
I'm not that much of a moron when I talked about it a month and a half or 2 months ago. That's good.
You're a complete.
That's what I take out of this.
Yes, no, but I mean, and honestly, I don't think the Islanders fan base are going to have that much of a problem with this, because it's obviously back at the building that the team has been at the entire time. But I wonder how much of a struggle there's going to be with the fact that there's not as many seats. It's 12,500 or something like that.
Well, it'll create demand, but there'll also be fans that, like, I just got a tweet about it saying, well, the LAE's horrible with traffic on a weeknight to get here, to get there without mass transit. I get all that. So here's the thing. You had mass transit that went to Brooklyn and you pretty much ignored it. So now, isn't it better to just get in your car and drive to the game, even in traffic, to see them where you wanted to see them? My answer is, yeah, that's the way I'm going to choose. And so you can't have everything, especially in New York, where no matter what, some way, somehow, and Long Island too, you're going to be inconvenienced. It's part of life there. But what this does is this gives ownership, gives Ledecky a leg up in remarketing the team this year and next year and getting as many season tickets sold to move over to the new building. Because let's face it, they probably don't even have that many people that were Brooklyn-only Islander fans that signed up for season tickets. It's probably a very small list.
Yeah, I would.
So they're going to get to remarket to kids and on Long Island, which to me is a big deal.
Yeah, I would doubt that I bet you they could count on two hands the number of people they got in the Brooklyn area. I bet there wouldn't be that many. Now, a couple other things announced at the All-Star game. The next All-Star game will be in San Jose. That's fine. You know, wine country near San Francisco.
And they'll make it very San Jose-ish, and people out there will love it.
Yeah. They announced that there will be another set of preseason games in China. They haven't announced who yet. There is some speculation. I think Boston was one of the teams, but there was nothing set in stone. So I guess they're talking to the PA about that. They did announce games in Europe, preseason and regular season. New Jersey. I think this was clever. They're having the Devils play a Swiss League team in the preseason, taking advantage of Nico Hischier. They had the Oilers playing a game against a Deutsch League team with obviously Leon Draisaitl playing for the Oilers. And then the two of them will play a preseason or a regular season game to open the season in Sweden.
It's good marketing.
Yeah, good marketing. Now, same thing with Florida. This will be taking place during the regular season. They're going to play two games, Florida and Winnipeg. So Laine and Barkov, smart. You know, bringing both
they might
of those,
draw more in Sweden than in Florida.
Well, or in Finland, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
Finland. Sorry, in Finland than in Florida.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, especially if it's on a Tuesday night. You know, you got 5,000 people are disguised as empty seats. So yeah, I think that's smart. But the only one I don't know about is the China thing. But I really think that this whole China initiative is sort of a way of ingratiating the NHL to the Chinese government to get them to get a little leverage on the IOC for 2022. I think that's
and but it's more than that. They'll have more games there. Like, would it shock you if they're really making the hard sell over there, and with all the money that's floating in China, I'm pretty sure that game's going to be sold out, because I think they're going to make sure it's sold out.
Well, there are 1 billion people there, so it's
That's
like
what I mean. I think they'll make sure the tickets are sold.
Yeah. One interesting thing: the 4 coaches of the 4 division teams, a couple players, some general managers. There was a meeting at the All-Star game regarding the recent events in terms of goaltender interference, and Bettman came out and they said that they were going to issue a sort of a clarification, which I thought that they were going to do. They basically said when it comes to the officials, don't search a play to death. The call on the ice is good unless there's a good reason to overturn it. So what they're saying is don't get into the minutia of this. If there's incidental contact, I mean, that Matthews play against Colorado last week, it was incidental contact. Bernier was not affected by it, and it should have counted. And the McDavid one was almost as ridiculous. So I mean, I think
the problem now is they have basically taking it out of Toronto's hands and putting it back on the refs. And it's the exact opposite of what they're doing with most other calls, if you think about it. So now they're really making it subjective, because now the guys on the ice may never have it go any further, and you might still complain at home. How do you not even review that? Like, do you know what I mean? Well, they did the reverse on this now.
I think there'll still be a review. I just think that right now, unless there's incontrovertible evidence that the goaltender was interfered with, if there's just incident, I mean, right now,
but now they might look at it for 12 seconds and say, we're good with it. And who knows what Toronto thinks.
Right. I mean, I was at the arena that night. They took about 4 minutes going over and over and over the video to the point of, okay, the butt end of Bernier's stick got entangled in Matthews' paraphernalia. I was like, okay, great, wonderful. It didn't affect Bernier. That's the problem. That's the end result. It's like, okay, it's great, there was contact, but if it didn't affect the goaltender, then it shouldn't have been a no goal call. So that's where I think, going forward, they're basically saying unless the goaltender is limited by the contact, or unless he's, like, say, knocked off his feet, then you're not gonna see the goal waved off. So it sounds like they're changing course in sort of midstream, and maybe
they are, and they're putting more pressure on the referees. They really are.
Yeah. Okay. Now to things that are happening now. Getting away from the All-Star game and things that happened during the little break. Jaromir Jagr's career apparently in the NHL is over with, at least for this season and maybe forever.
Nah, it's probably forever.
Probably forever, but he was placed on waivers on Saturday. He placed on waivers on Sunday. Cleared waivers today. It appears that they haven't announced this, but it appears that they're going to terminate the contract, and he is likely headed to his club team that he owns in Kladno in the Czech Republic. The funny thing is, I know that there was an injury situation here. They waited until he was 100% healthy to do this, but they waited until just before the Olympics. And it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like they waited until there was no way he could be chosen for the Czech Republic team.
Yeah, but I think at this point we've gotten enough. Like, we only thought that was viable if he didn't get a look before then in the NHL. He's had a long look, and so did teams, and teams decided it's not worth it. Now, here's the thing. Okay, I saw him play in practice and in a game. In practice, he's great, right? He's having fun, but he literally was jumping in on every line. And like when I think I even told you this, when he jumped in on with like Goudreau and Monahan, he can't keep up with those guys. So he would go with a different line. And I think, unfortunately, with a lot of teams, and especially that team, with the team speed they have, it's hard to find guys to play with. Now, we all come up with this, and I've said it too, what if he's just a power play guy? Literally just a power. Teams don't want to devote a contract to just that and cap space. Now, they do devote that still to some enforcers, which is crazy, but they don't want to do it to an aging guy, even for a power play. So that really limits him. And the other thing is, and again, we've never heard his side of it, if he still wants to be a top 6 guy with some sort of power play time, that's the other thing that's making teams bristle. If he was willing to be a fourth liner and just do whatever, he might get another shot, but I have a feeling he's not willing to do that.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, a few years ago when he was in Philadelphia and he was playing with Giroux.
Right.
I mean, he was slow, but he could still keep up, and he could, sort of cut corners, and he could dominate in the offensive zone by, controlling the puck and using his big butt to keep the defensive players away. But he can't do that when he can't get to the puck, and that's the problem. And he just apparently the speed factor was just too much for him. So yeah, I mean, I have a weird feeling he'll probably put out feelers next year, but I don't think there's going to be any team. I would have thought like at the beginning of the year that Vegas with their, and obviously not now because they're a successful team, but as a gate attraction and as somebody who, I thought that would be a good fit. And then
but that was when we thought Vegas would be a marginal team, and they're not, right? So
yeah,
that did change all that. I did get a piece of news from Anthony Mingione that Simmons, Voracek, and Nolan Patrick are now the second line for the Flyers. And I even texted back and said, what took so long? Because that's been my complaint for months and months, if you remember. Like, having Patrick on the third or fourth line didn't really get to show off what he can do, and he wasn't playing with the best line mates he could play with.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, he is. And I'm just kind of wondering, why did it take so long? Now, some might say, well, Dave Haxtell had to be comfortable with him playing a two-way game, but he's been playing a two-way game for a while now and struggling point-wise. And so it just seems like this could have been made sooner, but I'm happy that it was made.
Yeah, I mean, it could just simply be that they wanted him to earn his spot and not just give him a top 6 forward.
Right, but I mean, again, how much does the guy have to do to earn his spot other than scoring points? I think he did that for a while.
Right, and we're not talking about some 5th round pick. We're talking about the second overall pick and the guy that you think is going to be, on your top 2 lines for the next decade. So, how much does he really have to do to earn that spot? I sort of agree, but
yeah.
Now he's there, at least, right, tentatively right now he's there.
But that's the other thing. So you already, in your mind, you have switched to, well, it's probably temporary. And it's like, why? Why is it temporary? Why is it not for the rest of the season?
Because of what they've done in the first half of the season. I think, because I'm basing it on how they've treated them. I mean, if it's me, if it's a young team, if it's a team that doesn't have a ton of expectations, which I didn't have of the Flyers, maybe internally Hextall and Hackstall did, I would have played him in a primary position and let him, learn and let him, make his mistakes. They're playing him on the third and fourth line. They're playing him in a checking role. So I'm saying if he doesn't flourish in this, if he has a couple bad games, he could find himself right back in the third and fourth line again.
I hope that's not the case.
So do I. Yeah, so do I, because I think he's a good player.
Yeah.
Okay. The news out of Winnipeg, and this, on top of the Scheifele injury,
and aside from the bad weather, we just assume that.
Yeah. we'll talk about that when we get Peter on the show on Wednesday or Thursday. But Jacob Trouba, who I think arguably is their best defenseman, is out 6 to 8 weeks with an ankle injury. He hurt it in the last game. I think it was against Anaheim before the break. Now that they're without him for that time period. Kulikov is out, but it's not a long-term injury. They're relying now more on Myers, more on Bufflin, more on Morrissey, and I think Enstrom, and they're putting rookie Tucker Pullman in the lineup. I don't know much about him.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a guy that would rather let more get more seasoning, but just can't. At the moment.
So and we talked about this with Peter when he was on the show last week. They were looking for, and I'm sure they're still looking for some veteran depth up the middle. But now I think that with this injury, and calculated out to 8 weeks, that's 2 months. That we're talking late March. We're talking maybe 2 weeks before the end of the regular season. So that's very close. So I would think that this will make Kevin Cheveldayoff step up his efforts before the deadline to bring in some veteran depth on the blue line as well.
Or
would
they trade back with Boston to get Paul Postma, who's really not playing much for them?
That's possible.
Because he's a guy that would fit right in. He knows the system. Like, that's the kind of deal I think you might see Kevin Cheveldayoff do, and do it for a conditional fourth or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's very, Postma's, from what I recall, from what I remember, he's 7th or 8th, and with all the young defensemen like Grzelcyk and obviously McAvoy and Carlo playing there. Now, McAvoy is out. They just got McQuaid back in the last couple of weeks, so that they may have to wait on that until McAvoy comes back, unless Boston is comfortable with the with the depth that they have on the blue line past Postma. But
I did see an article, and I apologize that I don't remember where it came from, but they had Rich Peverly, who had the same situation, quoted in it, basically saying to McAvoy, "Hey, get it right the first time."
Right. And
so that's going to be, if that's truly what happens here, it could be longer than what's anticipated, just so they do.
Right. Jonas Gustafsson had the ablation procedure. He was back in a couple weeks, and then he had to have it done again.
Right. I remember he struggled. Yeah.
Yeah. He was lethargic when he got back. It affected him for a while. Then he had the procedure.
He was like me after a 5K walk.
Yeah. Or me getting up in the morning. Now, interesting thing, and we're not going to go into the standings right now, but just sort of as an overview. If you look at the Central Division right now and you look at the Metro Division right now, everything is really compacted in terms of the standings. And I read Pierre LeBrun from The Athletic. He was talking to David Poyle, the GM of the Nashville Predators, and said, with the standings so packed, so tight, that it's probably going to make these teams make moves at the deadline to improve. Essentially, like, Nashville's looking for additional scoring. They're probably going to go out and have to get that additional scoring because they're not in really any kind of comfortable position in that division. St. Louis just got Jaden Schwartz.
But I think Nashville will get that scoring from Tolvanen.
Yeah, but they can't. They may not be able. Tolvanen might not be.
They'll get him by April.
Not necessarily. What if his
season's over? I think, doesn't their season end like April 25th or something?
Yeah, it goes into the playoffs. if Joker, I mean, if Joker goes in the playoffs, I think it can last to mid to late May. I mean, I remember Nikita Zaitsev being in the playoffs in the KHL and the playoffs lasting into May. So they might not get him until if they, going further in the playoffs. So I don't think I mean, if he's free, great, but they may not have to be able to rely on his availability. So, but now St. Louis is continuing supposedly to look for additional scoring. Now they did get Schwartz back, but they've still had some injuries. And I mean, I look at that division, and now Winnipeg is going to probably be looking for a defenseman, but you've got all these teams out there with one or two needs. And I think so many sellers out there that I think that you're going to see, and maybe not the blockbuster deal, but you're going to see an increase of the marginal deal, an increase of the
yeah, I could see an increase of the marginal deal, but you're still not going to see it until late. There'll be like a late flurry because there are plenty of teams out there that don't want to start this second half believing they're out of it.
Yeah, and I wrote a piece regarding the Atlantic Division and a couple of the Canadian teams, and Montreal and Ottawa are clearly sellers. I mean, right now, if you look at the Atlantic Division race is over with basically.
Right.
Right now, Toronto has got a 15-point lead on Montreal, Detroit, Florida, Buffalo, and Ottawa. So the race is essentially over with. Tampa's 10 points ahead of Toronto for first place. Boston is 5 points ahead of them, and they got 4 games in hand. So right now, on January 29th, more than likely the standings the way they are right now, at least the top 3 are going to remain the same.
Yeah, that division has just completely crapped out. It really has.
Yeah. Now the thing is, these teams are definitely sellers, but that, like you said, that doesn't mean that they're going to move right away. They could wait until the 11th hour. I mean, Detroit is hell bent on getting a first round pick for Mike Green. If they get the first round pick, if somebody offers them that first round pick on February 1st, I'm sure they'll do the deal, but more than likely they're going to have to wait until maybe the weekend before to get that.
Well, because again, the team that's thinking about spending the first round pick has to really make sure they can make a playoff run.
Yeah. Now
it's a two-way street that way.
Yeah. Now Ottawa, the interesting thing here is Ottawa and Montreal. They're both going to be sellers. They have, Ottawa has a few rentals, but most of their guys and most of Montreal's guys that are being talked about are players with term left in their contracts. Pacioretty, Galchenyuk, Hoffman.
I don't think. I'll tell you one thing I learned from being in Canada. I don't think Pacioretty's getting dealt.
I don't think he's getting.
Was there to spark him. He got sparked. He's scoring goals again. I don't think he's going anywhere.
I don't think he's getting dealt unless they get the price that they want. And the price that they want, I think, is unreasonable, at least in season, which is they want a young center. Any deal that they make, they're looking to make up for the mistake that they made. And this is the thing. This is the dangerous thing for Bergevin. They're looking to make up for the mistake that they made with the Drouin deal in the sense that Drouin was a center, and he's not a center. And now they need a center in exchange if they trade Galchenyuk or trade Pacioretty because they're both wingers. They can't. Neither one of them can play center. Not that Pacioretty has ever been asked to try, but they need that reinforcement up the middle. They don't have anybody that's in their organization right now who I think is capable of being a first or second line NHL center, at least in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And getting that will be extremely difficult. It will be hard. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen. And so I expect Pacioretty to stay. Matter of fact, there's headlines in the Gazette that they're basically saying Pacioretty has said that it's been very frustrating for him. Mm-hmm. And at some point, this is your captain. If he's going to continue to be your captain, you've got to take him off the griddle as the GM. And so at some point, Bergevin needs to do that because no good is coming out of this unless he really truly is dealt. Now, Galchenyuk, I don't think they should deal him because now I don't think you're going to get value. But, yeah, he could get dealt.
Well, and again, that's the question. Can they get what they're asking for? And that's the thing. Galchenyuk is minus 24 this year. He's got 12 goals. I'm a believer in his talent. I've just never believed he's a center. So, okay,
Right.
now he's under contract for 2 more years, making less than $5 million. He's a 20 to 25 goal scorer who has scored 30 in the past.
Just so you know, Hockey DB agrees with you. They still have him listed as a left winger.
Right. And okay, so he, for a team that is looking for a scoring winger, a top 6 winger, and somebody who they can hold on to for a year or two, he makes sense. But they're not going to give him up for a low first round pick. There's Ak mentioned last week Galchenyuk having interest in the Columbus Blue Jackets having interest in Galchenyuk. Great. Well, they're going to ask for Dubois.
Right.
And then once Jarmo Kekalainen gets done laughing, then what? I mean, okay. So I don't know.
If it's going anywhere. To answer to something in the chat room again, the Larry Brooks Ranger stuff. Okay.
Yes.
So, if you are truly going to be reshuffling this team, why did you pick up Cody McLeod? Clearly, only a team that thinks they can make the playoffs would pick up Cody McLeod, unless you're going to put him in Hartford because you're going to win the Calder Cup, and I don't think that's why they did it.
No, I think it was a pickup. It was a roster filler, sort of like Ottawa did with Puyarvi. They picked them up because they may be trading players, and they need, instead of calling up guys from Hartford that they don't think are ready, they have a guy who's a veteran who can step in and finish the rest of the season if they trade a Grabner, if they trade a Nash.
I mean, Lundqvist wouldn't talk about it at the All-Star game. He sort of dismissed it, which I don't blame him. And so now we're at this point where, again, it sounds nice that you say, hey, let's trade Rick Nash. He's got to agree to it. So that makes it hard. Grabner, that's fine. And then Zuccarello, again, being Lundqvist's best friend, is he going to get dealt and then come back the next year? Maybe. But these are all big maybes. And again, we haven't really seen anything happen yet to tell us that the Rangers are really doing this. And something short of 4 or 5 losses in a row is the only way I think it happens. Mm-hmm. Because if they start winning games, are they going to do this? I don't know.
If it was a rental deal for Zuccarello, it would make sense because then they could do the old Keith Tkachuk. He'll come back and sign in the summer, and they get something for it. But he's got a year left, so that doesn't add up. Now,
it doesn't add up.
It's the same thing for McDonough, and we've talked about that before. The ridiculous floating of William Nylander as a potential cost in a trade for Toronto. This is the thing, and it's come out in the last week or so. And I sort of buy it, being around the team and covering the team. I don't think that Lou Lamoriello. I mean, I do think that if they get a good price on a rental defenseman, that they would make that move because, I keep going back to Eric Branson, who, by the way, is on the injured list right now. But Babcock likes players with size. He's a right-hand shot. I don't think I think he would play in their top 6. Much to the chagrin of some of the Leaf fans out there who want to see young guys like Dermott and Carrick play and Borgman. But Babcock is a guy who likes his veterans, so he will go with veterans. And if they want to make a run, they want to go have a good chance to beat Boston or Tampa Bay in the first or second round, they're going to have to improve their defense. But the outlook out there, guys like Drager and Bob McKenzie have basically been saying ad nauseum for most of this year that the Leafs are looking for long-term solutions on the blue line. That doesn't mean one-year guys like McDonough unless they can get him re-signed, or one-year guy like a Nicholas Yarmulson. If they trade for Ekman Larson, say, for example, in the summer, they're going to immediately try to extend him because they're going to get that indication before they ever trade for him because it's not worth it to them to trade it for a guy who's a one-year fix. So,
well, I mean, again, and I don't think they're going to get assurances from Ekman Larson because I think he is going to test free agency. And the same as, I just see in the chat room, 2 different reports say Vegas is interested in Nash. Well, sure. But why are you going to pay $3.5 million or whatever it's going to cost you, $2.5 million on a prorated deal for Rick Nash this season and give up assets?
Right.
You could try and just sign him next year.
Right. And Doug McClain was on Fan 590 in Toronto this morning, floated the idea of Nash going back to Columbus.
Never happened.
Right.
Never.
He said Rick Nash loved it in Columbus. He asked to be traded from there. So that would be
Here's the funny thing. I don't want to disagree with McClain because certainly he was the GM there, right?
Right.
I had interviewed Rick Nash in the middle of his Columbus career and got the vibe he wasn't happy there.
Right.
McClain was long gone. I don't think McClain had a real good idea at that point how frustrated Rick Nash was growing with that franchise. Now, they're a completely different franchise. But the problem is now they don't have a lot of money.
Right. And remember when the talk was talking
he's going to want term. He's still going to want 4 or 5 years.
He's not going to get 4. He's not going to get 5. He might get 3 or 4.
Yeah,
I think he's perfectly positioned to get an Eric Stahl contract with maybe a little more money. Yeah. I mean, I heard somebody say, well, Patrick Marleau got 6. Why can't I? Well, Patrick Marleau has put up better numbers than Nash, other than that one big year.
Way better numbers.
Yeah, and the thing is, Nash likes it in New York, and I once heard the explanation is in New York, you can sort of hide in plain sight.
And you get treated first class.
You get traded first class, you get paid big money, and you basically blend into the woodwork in New York City. Yeah. You don't get recognized, whereas in Toronto, you're a rock star.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why he's a Toronto area boy. That's one of the reasons when the talk was of him getting traded from Columbus, it was essentially known that he didn't want to go to Toronto. Now, Toronto is different now.
And he may get to the point where he really wants to win, so he may override that at some point. I think
there's one of the amusing things from the All-Star break was apparently Austin Matthews was sweet talking Drew Doughty about coming to Toronto on the ice during like one of the drills. Yeah. And Doughty just laughed and skated away. So, it's like, okay, good on Matthews to try to get players to come there. But I think it's going to take more than that just to have that happen.
Of course.
Okay, let's touch quickly before we end the show on the top prospects. I wanted to ask you specifically about like the players like that we were talking about at the World Junior, the Zadinas, the Svechnikovs. Who do you think helped his stock the most at the top prospects?
I think Zadina. I think he said he wants to be second in the World Juniors. We all said, "Hey kid, that's great. You had a great World Juniors. Let's see how it works out." And he had a great top prospects game too. Right. So I think he did a lot for his stock to maybe be a second overall pick. So I think he helped himself the most. I think in a way, even though he didn't score, Svechnikov still helped himself in the sense that his shot looked a lot better. And I think that wrist injury was bothering him still. Not 100% when you come back from that. And playing in the World Juniors, we didn't see any great rocket shots out of him in the World Juniors. I think he didn't even have a goal, right? And so I think it's a situation where we looked at what we saw in that game, and he was firing off shots. Now, the other interesting thing in that game was, and a lot of guys were doing this, especially the higher guys like Zadina, like Svechnikov, they would have a really nice play, rocket off a nice shot, ask for an immediate change. So they were changing quickly.
Okay.
They didn't want to get hurt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it can definitely affect their stock. I mean, we've seen players have injuries and it really, affect their draft position. And, I mean, everybody gets the same entry level deal, but bonuses and opportunity and things of that nature. I mean, we look at the top 5 of this draft, and people in Buffalo are already starting to like look at, okay, can we get Brady? Can we get Brady Tkachuk? Because I mean, you look at, that would be almost an immediate replacement for for a guy like Evander Kane, who they're going to trade before February 26th. You see the top level of this draft, and I'm not saying it's as good as 2015, but Dahlin is clearly the number one, and then you have Zadina and Svechnikov and Hughes and Kachuk and Boquist. I mean, it's a good group. I don't think it's as good as 2015, but I think it's a
different group. I mean, it's really deep defensively. It's once you get past 10 center wise, it's not going to be as deep as far as franchise guys. Winger wise, when you pass 15, I don't know how many franchise guys you're going to get with that either.
All right. Good show. We will be back tomorrow. I think we're going to do 1 o'clock tomorrow, but we'll let everybody know via Twitter. Eklund should be back, and we'll have some rumors to talk about. And we're getting closer to the season jump starting, and we are now less than a month away from the NHL trade deadline, which to my mind is my favorite time of the year.
Good time.
Yep. All right. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.